I helped an elderly woman and lost my job, but I never expected what happened next. I grew up knowing exactly where I stood in my family's pecking order. If you ask my parents, they'd swear up and down that they love my sister and me equally. But love isn't measured in words. It's measured in actions. And their actions made it pretty obvious that Ashley, my older sister, was the one who got the VIP treatment. Ashley was everything parents dream about. At least, that's how mine saw her. She was a straight-A student, the soccer team captain, the girl with perfect hair, who could charm any adult into thinking she was the sweetest person alive. She wasn't a bad person, but she also wasn't some saint. But to my parents, she could do no wrong. Meanwhile, I was a kid who got a pat on the back if I managed to pass my classes and didn't set the house on fire. It wasn't just about school, either. Ashley got what she wanted when she wanted it. New clothes? No problem. The latest phone? Already pre-ordered. Concert tickets? Front row, of course. Me? I got a second-hand bike and a reminder that hard work builds character. I had been told that so many times growing up, I could hear it in my sleep. Hard work builds character. Yeah, well, character doesn't get you a ride to school when it's raining, and it definitely doesn't buy you a car when you turn 18. Speaking of which, let's talk about my sister's 18th birthday. The way my parents celebrated. You'd think she had just won an Olympic gold medal. They rented out a private room at one of those upscale steakhouse chains. Places where they don't even put the prices on the menu, because if you have to ask, you probably can't afford it. Ashley had a 3-tiered cake, balloons, and enough food to feed a small village. And then the moment of truth. My parents stood up, smiling so wide you'd think they had just announced world peace. My dad pulled a small box from his pocket and handed it to Ashley, who, of course, gasped dramatically like she had no idea what was happening. Inside the box, a set of car keys. A brand-new Toyota RAV4 was parked outside, wrapped in a giant red bow, like something out of a holiday car commercial. My sister screamed, my mom teared up, and my dad gave one of those proud nods that dads do when they feel like they've done something truly great. Meanwhile, I just stood there, trying to act like my stomach hadn't just hit the floor. For a brief, pathetic moment, I let myself believe there might be something for me, too. Maybe a used car, or even just some help buying one. But no. Instead, my dad turned to me, clapped a hand on my shoulder, and said something I will never forget. You should start thinking about saving up for your own car. Bud, hard work builds character. That was it. That was my gift. A reminder that, unlike my sister, I was on my own. Ashley didn't even need a car. She barely had her license and had driven maybe twice in her life. Meanwhile, I had been working part-time since I was 16, balancing school, weekend shifts, and what did I get? Another lecture about responsibility. I looked around the room, and the worst part? No one seemed to think this was unfair. It was just expected. Like, of course Ashley gets a new car, and of course I get nothing. That's just how it is. I watched as Ashley climbed into the driver's seat, turning the key with that smug look on her face. The engine roared to life, and she revved it way too hard, like she thought she was in a Fast and Furious movie. My mom dabbed at her eyes. Our baby is all grown up. Meanwhile, their other baby was standing in the driveway, wondering what it would take to be noticed for once. I had two choices: sit around feeling sorry for myself, or do what I'd always done, figure out on my own. And that's exactly what I planned to do. The thing about being the less important kid in the family is that you start to expect disappointment. But knowing something is coming doesn't make it hurt any less when it actually happens. Ashley's big birthday celebration was still fresh in my mind when college applications rolled around. She had already secured a spot at a well-known business school, one of those places with a name that looks good on a resume before you even start your first class. My parents couldn't have been prouder. They told everyone who would listen about how she was going to be the next big success story, how she had a bright future ahead of her. They never really said what I had ahead of me. When I started looking at colleges, I figured it would be a different story for me. I wasn't expecting a private school education or some expensive out-of-state university. I just wanted something decent, somewhere I could get a degree, start a real career, and maybe just maybe prove to my parents that I was worth investing in too. That dream crashed and burned in record time. One night, I sat down with them to talk about tuition, financial aid, just basic stuff. I wasn't even asking for a free ride. I just wanted to know if they could help at all. That's when I got hit with a classic line that still makes me grit my teeth when I think about it. We just don't have the money for that right now. Not enough money for me, but enough for Ashley. I wasn't stupid. I had overheard them talking one night when they thought I was asleep. They were discussing getting Ashley a condo near her school so she wouldn't have to deal with dorm life. A condo. Meanwhile, I was being told to figure out when it came to affording college. The worst part wasn't just the money. It was how they saw me. My parents truly believed Ashley was an investment. She was the one who would make them proud, the one who would bring prestige to the family. I was something else. Someone who needed to learn the value of hard work and build character. And by build character, they meant get a job. Or two. Or three. They wasted no time reminding me that, since I was technically an adult now, it was only fair that I started contributing more at home. Ashley had never been asked to pay a dime for anything, but suddenly, I was getting not-so-subtle hints about chipping in for rent and utilities. Let me get this straight. My sister gets a brand-new car and a condo, and I get to split the electric bill? I was angry. More than angry, I was exhausted. But I didn't have the luxury of sulking about it. I had to figure out a way to afford college, because if I didn't, I'd be stuck in my parents' house forever, paying half the bills while Ashley climbed her way to success on a golden staircase built just for her. So I did what I had to do. I worked. A lot. My first job was at a diner. Not the kind with hipster charm, but the kind with sticky booths, a jukebox that only half worked, and a menu that hadn't changed since the 90s. I worked the late shift, refilling coffee for truckers and locals who tipped in loose change and life advice. It wasn't glamorous, but it was money. Then there was a warehouse job. Heavy lifting, long hours, and a manager who acted like letting us breathe with a favor. I'd come home sore, covered in dust, and smelling like cardboard. My parents barely noticed. On weekends, I picked up shifts at a gas station. That was the real test of patience. You wouldn't believe how many people come in mad about gas prices, like the guy behind the counter personally raised them just to ruin their day. Between the 3 jobs, I scraped together just enough to afford community college, and buy the kind of car that people describe as having character, which is just a nice way of saying barely runs. The engine sounded like a lawnmower, the AC was just a decorative feature, and every time I hit a bump, something new rattled. But it was mine. It was brutal. There were nights I'd come home and collapse on my bed, wondering how much longer I could keep this up, and then there were the moments that made it worse. The days I'd see my parents casually transferring money to Ashley's account just in case she needed anything, while I was stretching my last few bucks until payday. The afternoons I'd come home from a 10-hour shift to see my sister lounging by the pool, living the easy life, completely oblivious to how hard I was working just to stay afloat. I kept telling myself it wouldn't be forever, that something had to change, that eventually things would turn around, because they had to, right? At some point, you just have to accept reality. If you're the extra kid in the family, nothing you do will ever be enough. My parents had made it clear Ashley was their priority, and I was the guy they expected to pay rent while they funded her success. That's when I knew I had to get out. Leaving home wasn't some grand rebellion. It wasn't even dramatic. I just sat my parents down one evening and told them I was moving out. They barely reacted. My dad nodded, like I had just informed him about the weather, and my mom only had one question. Was I still going to send the money to help with Ashley's tuition? That was the moment I realized just how little they cared about me leaving. I almost laughed. They had a son walking out the door for good, and all they were worried about was their golden child's college fund. So I packed up my stuff, which didn't take long. It's amazing how little you accumulate when no one ever buys you anything. My car barely fit into the category of roadworthy, but it got me where I needed to go. Finding a place to live on a shoestring budget was its own adventure. I ended up with a studio apartment that could generously be described as cozy, though that word was doing a lot of heavy lifting. The building had that charming scent of stale pizza and old carpet, and the walls were thin enough that I knew my neighbor had a thing for late-night true crime podcasts. Then there were the roommates I hadn't signed up for, roaches. Big ones. The kind that didn't scurry when you turned the lights on because they had been there longer than you. The first night, I swore one of them waved at me from the sink. But it was mine. My own place. No one could tell me what to do. Or worse, ask me for a rent payment on a house I didn't even own. Living alone, though, came with a different kind of struggle. Rent was eating up most of my paycheck, and food wasn't far behind. I became an expert in dollar menu dining. If you've never had a week where your main meal is a fast food chain's cheapest burger, congrats, you're doing better than I was. At night, I'd sit in my apartment, listening to the buzzing of flickering fluorescent light, eating instant noodles straight from the pot because I only had one clean dish left. My budget was so tight, I started strategizing my grocery shopping like I was planning a military operation. The discount aisle became my best friend. If something was marked down because it was about to expire, it went straight into my cart. Then, just as I started wondering how long I could survive on instant noodles and gas station coffee, my phone rang. It was my friend Mark, and he had a job offer. He worked as a waiter at this upscale cafe downtown, the kind of place where they serve tiny portions on big plates and customers act like they're royalty because they overpay for avocado toast. It was busy, but the tips were solid, and they needed more staff. Mark vouched for me, and just like that, I had an interview. The idea of working in a high-end place felt foreign. I was used to diners, warehouses, and gas stations. But money was money, and I wasn't about to turn down a chance to actually afford rent without having to decide between eating or keeping the lights on. I showed up the next day, wearing the nicest button-up I owned, which wasn't saying much, and walked into a place that looked straight out of one of those Instagram food blogs. Chandeliers, soft jazz playing, servers who carried themselves like they were working at a five-star restaurant. This was a whole different world. The manager was a guy in his 40s with the kind of posture that screamed, I take my job way too seriously. He eyed me up and down like he was trying to figure out if I was even worth his time. He asked me about my experience, and I told him the truth. I had worked at a diner, which technically counted as restaurant experience, even if most of the customers were truckers who considered tipping optional. Somehow I got the job. Maybe they were just desperate, or maybe Mark had really sold me as a hard worker. Either way, I walked out of that cafe with a uniform and a schedule. And if I played my cards right, it was about to be mine. The cafe had looked like a dream job from the outside, elegant, high-end, the kind of place where people spent $40 on a salad and thought they were being reasonable. But once I stepped behind the scenes, I realized I had walked straight into a nightmare. The manager, Craig, ran the place like a drill sergeant with a caffeine addiction. Nothing was ever good enough. The napkins weren't folded right. The silverware wasn't polished enough. The water glasses weren't filled to his impossible standard. The guy could spot a streak on a plate from across the room, like he had some kind of sixth sense for imperfection. And he was loud, always barking orders, snapping at the staff, making everyone feel like they were seconds away from getting fired. The kitchen crew moved like they were working under threat of execution, and the servers? We were just trying to survive. I lost count of how many times I saw one of the line cooks on the verge of tears. Mark, my friend who got me the job, looked like he aged 5 years every shift. At first, I tried to keep my head down. Just do the work. Don't draw attention. Stay out of Craig's line of fire. But that was impossible. He found something to yell about no matter what. One time, I got chewed out because a fork was slightly out of place on a table. Another time, he made me redo an entire section's water glasses because apparently they didn't sparkle enough. It wasn't just about perfection. It was about control. And we all knew it. But hey, the tips were good. So I gritted my teeth and kept going. Then came the night my sister walked in. I spotted her the second she entered the restaurant. Ashley, dressed like she had just stepped out of a designer catalog, surrounded by her equally polished friends, all of them looking around like the place barely met their standards. I had a bad feeling the moment I saw her, but I still had a job to do, so I put on my best neutral face and walked up to their table. Before I could even ask for their order, Ashley smirked, loud enough for her friends to hear. She started in on me. "Oh, wow. I didn't know you actually worked here. This is kind of sad." Her friends giggled. I could already tell they were enjoying the show. I kept my voice even, just asked what they wanted to eat. But she wasn't done. "I just don't get it. Didn't Mom and Dad say you were so independent? And now you're, what, serving food to people who actually made something of themselves?" When her friends chimed in, "I bet he doesn't even get free meals. That's rough." I felt my patience wearing thin, but I kept my cool. I wasn't about to lose my job over Ashley's need for attention. I grabbed my notepad, ready to get this over with. But right as I reached for her friend's menu, Ashley accidentally knocked over the ketchup bottle. It hit me square in the chest. Red, sticky, right down my front. Her friends gasped dramatically, but I saw the smile she tried to hide. "Oops," she said, covering her mouth like she was actually surprised. I clenched my jaw, but I wasn't about to let her win. "No problem," I said, grabbing a napkin. "I'll just add dodging flying condiments to my skill set." That should have been the end of it. But no, Ashley wasn't satisfied. She leaned back, faking offense. "Wow, rude much? Is this how you talk to all the customers? No wonder you're stuck waiting tables." Then she turned, waving dramatically. "Excuse me, manager." And just like that, Craig appeared. Because, of course, the one time I needed him to be somewhere else, he was right there. Ashley put on the act of a lifetime. "I don't know what's wrong with your staff, but my server is being extremely disrespectful. I'm just trying to have a nice dinner, and he's being completely unprofessional." Craig's eyes locked onto me like a heat-seeking missile. "Step into my office." Now, I didn't even get a chance to explain. He just laid into me the second the door shut. "Do you know how much this restaurant's reputation matters? Do you understand that every customer is an opportunity for this place to grow? And you decide to insult guests? What kind of idiot does that?" I opened my mouth to defend myself, but he cut me off. "No, I don't want to hear it. You're lucky I don't fire you right now. But since I'm feeling generous, here's what's going to happen. You're working the rest of your shift for free. Consider a lesson in gratitude." Gratitude, right? Because I should be so grateful to work under a guy who treated his staff like disposable napkins. Craig stormed out, leaving me standing there, ketchup drying on my shirt, fists clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms. Meanwhile, outside, Ashley and her friends were laughing, paying their bill like nothing had happened. I watched them walk out, her satisfied smirk still fresh in my mind. One thing was for sure, I wasn't going to forget this. As I wiped off the ketchup and took a deep breath, I knew one thing. This wasn't over. I was already counting down the minutes until my shift ended when I noticed her standing outside. The rain had picked up, turning the sidewalk into a mirror of city lights, and there she was, a tiny, frail woman, soaked to the bone, her thin coat doing absolutely nothing to keep her warm. She looked lost, her eyes darting around as if she were trying to remember where she was supposed to be. I had already had my fair share of problems at work, and after the whole Ashley disaster, I wasn't exactly Craig's favorite employee. But something about the way she stood there, trembling in the rain, made it impossible to ignore. I grabbed my jacket and stepped outside. "Ma'am, are you all right?" She blinked at me, her lips forming a small smile, but there was hesitation in her eyes. I think I got turned around. I was walking, and then I don't know where I was going. It hit me immediately. She wasn't just lost. She had no idea how to get home. The rain was getting worse, and leaving her out there wasn't an option. I led her inside the cafe, ignoring the side eye from one of the other servers, and pulled up a chair for her near one of the heating vents. "Here, sit. Warm up for a bit. I'll get you something to eat." I didn't even think twice before grabbing my own meal, the sad, slightly overcooked dinner that had been set aside for staff. It wasn't much, but it was hot, and she needed it more than I did. She hesitated before taking it, her hands shaking as she held the fork. "Thank you, dear. I can't remember the last time I ate." That hit harder than I expected. I sat down across from her, watching as she took Careful bites. Do you remember anything about where you were going? Maybe a street name, a landmark. She frowned, staring down at the plate. I was going home. But I don't know where home is. I thought I did, but the more I walked, the more I forgot. That confirmed it. She had memory problems. Probably something more serious than just forgetfulness. The thought of her wandering around alone, completely lost, made my stomach twist. Before I could say anything else, I heard the worst possible voice at the worst possible time. What the hell is this? Craig. I turned, already knowing what was coming, and sure enough, Craig was standing there, arms crossed, looking at the woman like she was a stain on his expensive floors. She was out in the rain. I said, keeping my voice even, she's lost. I was just helping her warm up. Craig scoffed. She's a vagrant. This is not a shelter. Get her out of here. The woman immediately started to rise from her seat. I don't want to be any trouble. You're not? I interrupted, glaring at Craig. She's a person, and she's lost. I wasn't about to leave her out there. Craig's jaw tightened. This isn't your house, and you don't make the rules. Either she leaves or you do. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. Surely he wasn't serious. But the look on his face told me he absolutely was. The woman stood, brushing crumbs from her coat. I can go. No, I said firmly, standing up beside her. You're not going anywhere alone. Craig rolled his eyes. Fine, then you can both leave. And don't bother coming back. And just like that, I was unemployed. I took a deep breath, pushing down the anger threatening to boil over. Instead, I turned to the woman and forced a small smile. Come on, let's get out of here. We stepped outside, the rain still coming down in a steady drizzle. She looked up at me with the saddest expression. I'm so sorry. You lost your job because of me. I shrugged. Wasn't much of a job to begin with. I'll find another. She hesitated before speaking again. I don't have anywhere to go. I sighed, running a hand through my already rain-soaked hair. Well, lucky for you, I just became a guy with way too much free time. You can stay at my place tonight, and tomorrow we'll figure something out. Deal. She hesitated, then nodded. Deal. We climbed into my barely functioning car, the heater groaning as I cranked it up. As I drove us back to my apartment, I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of the situation. Less than an hour ago, I had a job. Now, I had nothing except an unexpected house guest who might not even remember where she lived. When we got to my place, she looked around my tiny apartment like it was the Taj Mahal. You live here all by yourself? Yep, I said, flipping on the one working lamp. Unless you count the roaches, but I try not to. She chuckled, settling into the only chair I owned. Well, it's warmer than outside. I rummaged through my kitchen, looking for something that could pass as dinner. A half-eaten bag of chips, some expired bread, and a can of soup that may or may not have been from last year. Great. All right, we're having gourmet tonight. Can soup and, if we're lucky, a side of questionable crackers. She laughed, a real one this time. Sounds perfect. I heated up the soup, splitting it between us. It wasn't much, but she seemed grateful. We ate in silence for a bit, the rain still tapping against the window. Finally, she spoke. Thank you, dear. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't stopped for me. I shrugged. Everybody needs a little help sometimes. She smiled softly, and for the first time all night, she looked at peace. As we finished eating, I pulled an old blanket from my closet and handed it to her. Get some rest. Tomorrow, we'll figure everything out. She nodded, curling up on the couch. Good night, dear. I turned off the lights, staring up at the ceiling from my own bed. I had no job, barely any money left, and no idea what tomorrow would bring. But somehow, for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth something. Morning came quicker than I expected. The tiny apartment was still dim, the sound of light rain tapping against the window, and for a moment, I forgot about everything that had happened the night before. Then I saw her, The elderly woman curled up on my couch, wrapped in the old blanket I had given her, peaceful but fragile, like she could disappear if I blinked too hard. I sat up, rubbing the stiffness out of my neck. Sleeping on my excuse for a mattress never did me any favors, but last night, it was worth it. The smell of cheap coffee filled the air as I poured 2 cups, setting one down on the table near her. She stirred at the sound, blinking a few times before smiling at me. "Good morning, dear." "Morning. Hope you like your coffee burnt and slightly questionable." She chuckled, taking a sip. "Reminds me of the coffee my husband used to make. He always burned it too." I smiled at that, but the reminder of her past brought me back to reality. We still had no idea where her home was, and she barely remembered anything about herself. I wasn't going to let her wander the streets again, so there was only one logical move. "I think we should go to the police station," I said. "See if anyone's reported you missing. Maybe they can help." She hesitated, but nodded. "That sounds like a good idea. I don't want to be a burden to you." "You're not a burden," I said. "Just a very unexpected house guest." She laughed again, a warm, genuine sound. But as we stepped outside, I barely had time to lock the door before something completely unexpected happened. A sleek, black SUV pulled up to the curb, engine humming softly. The kind of car that screamed money, the kind I'd only ever seen parked outside high-end restaurants. The door opened, and out stepped a man, tall, well-dressed, with the kind of confidence that only came with never having to check your bank account balance. Before I could even ask who the guy was, the woman beside me gasped. Her face lit up, her eyes filled with something I hadn't seen in them before, recognition. "Oh, it's you," she said, reaching for him. The man's expression shifted from tense worry to sheer relief. "Mom!" He rushed forward, wrapping her in a careful but desperate hug. "I've been looking everywhere for you. Are you all right? Where have you been?" I took a step back, letting the scene unfold. She looked up at him, blinking as if processing everything. I got lost. I couldn't remember where I was. But this kind young man helped me. He let me stay at his place." The man turned to me, his eyes filled with something I wasn't used to, gratitude. "You helped her?" I shrugged. She was standing outside my cafe, completely drenched and confused. I couldn't just leave her there. The man exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand down his face. "She has a tracking bracelet, one that's supposed to help in situations like this. But last night, with all that rain, it must have malfunctioned. It started working again early this morning, and as soon as I got the location, I came straight here." He turned back to his mother, squeezing her hands gently. "I was worried sick. I thought I lost you. I didn't sleep all night." The woman reached up, cupping his face with her frail hand. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I didn't mean to scare you." The raw emotion between them was enough to make me feel like an intruder in my own story. I looked away, suddenly feeling out of place. Then, the man turned back to me. "I don't know how to thank you. Seriously, if there's anything I can do, name a price. Whatever you need, it's yours." I shook my head immediately. I didn't do it for money. I just did what anyone decent would have done. His gaze lingered on me for a moment, like he was trying to figure me out. Then he nodded, as if coming to a decision. "Not many people would have done what you did, and I don't forget things like that." He helped his mother into the SUV, then turned back to me one last time. "I'll find a way to repay this. You'll hear from me soon." With that, he got into the car and pulled away, leaving me standing there, still trying to process what had just happened. Something told me this wasn't over yet. A few days passed, and I was back in an exhausting cycle of looking for a job. My savings were practically non-existent, and I couldn't afford to sit around waiting for a miracle. Bills didn't care about my unemployment status. Just as I was scrolling through another dead-end job listing, my phone buzzed. It was Mark, my friend from the cafe. I answered, half expecting him to tell me some new horror story about Craig, our former manager. "Dude, I hate that they fired you," he started. "But listen, something weird is happening." "Weird how?" "The cafe got bought out. Some really rich guy bought the whole place overnight. No one's seen him yet, but the rumors are insane." I sat up. "Wait, Someone actually spent money on that place. Yeah, and no one knows what's going to happen. Craig's been acting like he's still in charge, but honestly, I don't think he has a clue who he's dealing with. I laughed, shaking my head. Well, good luck with that circus. Mark sighed. Yeah, man. Just want to keep you in the loop. Hope you find something soon. I hung up, feeling a strange mix of amusement and curiosity. Rich people didn't just buy random cafes, unless they had a reason. But I had bigger things to worry about, like figuring out how I was going to pay rent next month. The next morning, I got another call, a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, assuming it was some job recruiter or, worse, a scam. But something told me to answer. Hello, is this? The man on the other end paused. The young man who helped my mother? I sat up straighter. Yeah. Who's this? It's David Kensington. We met a few days ago outside your apartment. I blinked. The guy with a fancy car. The son of the woman I'd helped. Oh, right. I'd like to meet with you, he said. There's something important I'd like to discuss. Are you available today? My brain immediately went into overdrive. This guy was obviously wealthy. What could he possibly want from me? Yeah, I guess. Where do you want to meet? There was a short pause. I know a place that might be fitting for this conversation. Let's meet at your old workplace. I had a million questions, but something told me I was about to get some answers. All right, what time? Noon. See you then. The line went dead. I arrived early, mostly because I wanted to see Craig's face when he realized I was back. Mark was working and did a double take when he saw me walk in. Dude, what? Long story. Just wait. A few minutes later, the black SUV pulled up outside. Kensington stepped out, looking even more polished than before, and his mother followed closely behind. They walked in like they owned the place, which, as it turned out, they did. The second Craig spotted them, his entire demeanor shifted. He straightened his tie, plastered on his fake manager smile, and walked over. Then his eyes landed on me, and the smile vanished. What's he doing here? Craig asked, barely containing his irritation. Kensington ignored the question. I want to talk to you. Sit. Craig hesitated. But something in Kensington's tone made it clear this wasn't a request. We all sat down at a table near the front, and I watched Craig shift uncomfortably. You remember this woman? Kensington gestured toward his mother, who gave Craig a polite smile. The one you threw out in the rain? Craig's face paled slightly. I didn't throw her out. I was following company policy. Company policy, Kensington repeated, like he was testing the words. And firing an employee for showing basic human decency. Was that company policy too? Craig's lips tightened. I'm the manager here. It was my decision. Kensington leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. Then, calmly, he said, Not anymore. Craig blinked. Excuse me? Kensington stood. I bought this cafe. I own it now, and I don't tolerate people who punish kindness. Craig's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The cafe had gone dead silent, every employee pretending not to listen but clearly hanging on to every word. And as for him, Kensington gestured toward me. I've already had the paperwork drawn up. This cafe now belongs to him. Silence. Craig looked like he had just swallowed his own tie. What? I wasn't doing much better. Wait, what? Kensington smirked slightly. I told you, I don't forget kindness. And my mother made it very clear. There's no one more deserving than you. I opened my mouth, then closed it. My brain was trying to process the fact that I had just been given an entire business. The old woman smiled warmly at me. You have a good heart, dear. And now you have a future. Kensington placed a pen and a stack of papers in front of me. All you have to do is sign. I stared at the papers, feeling my hand shake slightly. This couldn't be real. But it was. I took a deep breath and signed. Kensington grinned. Congratulations. You're officially the owner of this cafe. The room erupted into cheers. The staff was ecstatic. Craig, not so much. Kensington turned back to me. And now you get to decide, does Craig stay or does he go? Craig's face went beet red. He knew the answer before I even had to say it. But I didn't have to fire him. He quit 2 days later. Guess he couldn't handle taking orders from me. And as for the new manager, well, that was an easy choice. Mark, I said, clapping him on the back, how do you feel about a promotion? His eyes widened. You serious? Dead serious. He grinned. Then I guess I'm your guy. I leaned back in my chair, taking it all in. A week ago, I was unemployed, broke, and had no idea what my future held. Now, I was the owner of a cafe, surrounded by people who actually cared. Funny how life works. Owning a business came with its challenges, but for the first time in my life, I actually felt in control. The cafe had potential. It just needed someone who cared more about quality than arbitrary rules and yelling at employees over napkin placement. The first thing I did, I got rid of the overpriced vendor that had been supplying us with stale bread and replaced them with a local bakery. Then I expanded the menu to include better coffee, real pastries, and meals that didn't look like they belonged in a sad office meeting. Mark and I also started treating our employees like actual human beings, which, shockingly, made them want to work harder. Business picked up faster than I expected, and within a couple weeks, we were making more money than we ever did under Craig's dictatorship. The cafe had a different energy now. Customers noticed a change. Regulars started coming in more often, and we even got a wave of new customers thanks to some well-placed social media posts. Turns out, people really appreciate a place with good food and a staff that doesn't look like they're being held hostage. And Kensington? He didn't just disappear after signing over the cafe. He kept dropping by, always checking in, always making sure things are going well. Over time, we became friends. Turns out, despite his ridiculous wealth, he was a pretty down-to-earth guy, more comfortable in a simple cafe than in some high-end steakhouse. He even started giving me tips on business, helping me figure out how to streamline operations and increase profits without cutting corners. For once, I felt like I was actually building something. Then one afternoon, as I was reviewing inventory, I saw something that nearly made me spit out my coffee. A familiar car pulled up outside. My sister, Ashley, stepped out in designer sunglasses, flanked by a group of friends, all dressed like they were on their way to brunch at some exclusive club. I could tell by the way she walked in, smirking, eyes scanning the place like she was searching for something to mock, that she had no idea whose cafe she had just entered. I could have walked right up to her and shut it down immediately, but where's the fun in that? Instead, I grabbed an apron, tied it around my waist, and walked up to her table, playing the part of the humble server. Good afternoon, ladies. Can I get you started with anything? Ashley looked up and immediately grinned. Oh, my God. Are you serious? You're still working in places like this. Her friends giggled, already enjoying the show. I guess it makes sense, she continued. It's not like you had any real career prospects. I kept my expression neutral, just nodding as I pulled out a notepad. Would you like a menu, or should I just bring out something cheap and disappointing? Her friend snorted. Ashley rolled her eyes. You don't need to be rude. We'll have the house special and some mimosas. I scribbled something down, coming right up. As I turned, I accidentally tilted the tray just enough with the ketchup bottle on top to lose its balance. It flipped, tumbled through the air, and landed directly on Ashley's perfectly styled hair, splattering thick red streaks down her expensive blouse. She shrieked, leaping up as her friends gasped in dramatic horror. You absolute idiot. Get me the manager. Right now. I nodded, wiping my hands on my apron. Of course. Let me go get him. I disappeared into the back, pulled off my apron, adjusted my shirt, and walked right back out. Ashley was still standing, red-faced literally, demanding someone in charge. When she saw me return without the apron, her confusion was almost comical. Where's the manager? She snapped. I smiled. Oh, I'm right here. Her face twisted. What? I leaned against the table. Ashley, allow me to formally welcome you to my cafe. Hope you enjoy your visit, though I'm going to have to ask you and your friends to leave. We have a policy against entitled customers. Her friends were wide-eyed, whispering among themselves. A few people at nearby tables had taken their phones out, recording the whole thing. Ashley sputtered. How? Where did you get the money for this? I shrugged. Hard work, Ashley. You should try it sometime. She stormed out, still covered in ketchup, her friends trailing after her, some of them laughing under their breath. As soon as the door closed behind her, the cafe erupted in quiet cheers. A few customers even clapped. Mark walked up, grinning. Dude, that was better than reality TV. I exhaled, shaking my head. I have no regrets. And I didn't. For the first time in my life, I had one. Success is a funny thing. When you're struggling, no one sees you. But the second you make it, people start showing up like they always had your back. It didn't take long for my family to find out about the cafe. A few days after Ashley's dramatic exit, my parents walked in surprise. She was right behind them. They didn't even pretend this was a social visit. Dad got straight to the point. We need to talk. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. About what? Mom sighed dramatically. Your sister is having a hard time finding a job. She spent years getting her degree, and now there's nothing for her. And we spent a lot of money on her education. It's only fair that you help. Ashley, arms folded, looked like she had just swallowed a lemon. I deserve some support, she added. You got lucky. This, she gestured around the cafe, is just a fluke. But I actually work for my future. I blinked. Oh, you mean like how I worked 3 jobs while you were getting new cars and vacations? That kind of work. Dad scowled. We're family. Families help each other. It's time you started giving back. I chuckled, shaking my head. Giving back? Funny, because I don't remember getting much to begin with. Mom sighed, shaking her head. You're being selfish. Before I could respond, Mark walked over, arms crossed. Look, I don't mean to interrupt, but I think you guys should leave. Dad turned red. Excuse me? I manage this place, Mark said, and I know for a fact that the owner is a generous guy, but he's not a doormat. Ashley scoffed. This is ridiculous. Mark shrugged. Maybe, but you still need to go. They left, muttering under their breath. I watched them walk out, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. I didn't owe them anything. Not anymore. A year later, my life looked completely different. The cafe was thriving. So much so that I opened 2 more locations across the city. Each one had the same philosophy. Good food, good people, and a place where employees actually wanted to work. Turns out, when you treat people right, they go above and beyond. Kensington remained a good friend and mentor, helping me navigate the business world. I learned fast, and with each success, I built something bigger than just a cafe. I built stability, independence, and, for the first time, real happiness. I moved into a new home, a real one. No more cramped apartments with flickering lights and roach roommates. It wasn't a mansion, but it was mine. I still worked at the cafe sometimes, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I liked the people. I liked the energy. And I liked knowing that everything I had, I built myself. One evening, as I locked up for the night, I thought about how different my life had become. How a single act of kindness had led me here. Success wasn't about proving anything to my family anymore. It wasn't about revenge. It was about building something that actually mattered, and I had done exactly that.